Gentlemen, I have a grave and, as I understand, a rather controversial position to present to you.
What is it, old fellow?
Yes, what is it, my good man?
I have to tell you that I do not believe that this man, that most people regard as the Pope, is, in fact, the Pope.
You don't believe that he is the Pope?
Well, yes, that seems to be the case.
But how on earth, my dear man, can you conclude that the Pope isn't the Pope? I mean, that's like saying that triangles are not triangles, or that marmalade jam isn't marmalade jam.
Yes, well, of course, those things really would be absurd. But you see, I'm not saying anything of the sort. It's more like the claim that what we previously thought was marmalade jam is in fact some kind of strange mayonnaise.
So, just to be clear, you're telling us that the Pope isn't the Pope?
No, I'm telling you that perhaps he's a non-Pope.
But how can he be a non-Pope if he's the Pope?
But that's only if he really is the Pope. Unless, of course, he isn't really the Pope, in which case he'd be a non-Pope, you see?
But by the very fact that he is in fact the Pope, that would after all make him a Pope and not make him a non-Pope, you see?
Yes, I see what you're saying, but that really isn't what I'm trying to say.
Then really, what the devil do you mean?
Well, let me take a step back for a moment. I suppose that what I'm trying to say is that, as Catholics, we have certain criteria for what constitutes a true, valid Pope, and what doesn't. And I suppose that what I'm trying to say is that if we apply that criteria, we may well discover that this man who we previously thought was a valid, true Pope is in fact nothing of the sort.
But I already see a fatal flaw in whatever criteria you may have. You see, by applying the supposed criteria, we would come to the conclusion that this man isn't the Pope. But because we already know that this man is the Pope, it follows that he is in fact the Pope, and therefore your criteria must be wrong. There you see, I think that clears things up.
Excuse me, my dear fellow, but is that not putting the cart before the horse a bit? Isn't our criteria supposed to help us judge the conclusion? Not the other way around? Otherwise, what is our criteria for?
Arthur, I don't care what your criteria is. If it makes a lifelong devout Catholic reject the Pope, then it must be a load of wobble and hogwash. And really, and I mean this in all warm-hearted sincerity, old chap, but I don't see how you can call yourself a Catholic if you reject the Pope either.
Oh, please, of course. I understand the gravity of the situation very clearly. But again, I think you misunderstand me. I know that it is a clear and objective duty of any Catholic to accept the Pope and to be obedient to him. But at the same time, we are under no obligation, nay, we must even do our duty to reject a man who may pretend to be a Pope, but who in fact is not a real Catholic Pope.
It sounds like mad garble if you ask me.
Really, what are you basing this all on, Arthur?
The magisterium.
The magisterium! Well, there you have it, Arthur. The magisterium says that he's the Pope, and therefore he's the Pope. I really don't see the trouble.
But what do you mean exactly?
Well, it's very simple, old boy. The magisterium speaks for the hierarchy, does it not? The hierarchy recognizes him as a Pope, and therefore he's the Pope. There you go.
And, but, forgive me, but how do we know that they are functioning correctly as the hierarchy?
What madness are you talking about now?
Please, humor me and answer the question.
We know they are the true hierarchy because they are the ones who follow the Pope.
I see, but what if there were a hierarchy that was following a non-Pope?
Don't be ridiculous.
Really, Arthur, what exactly are you basing all of this on? It's not only one thing, really. But if I had to choose one, perhaps, well, just as one example. He's been praying alongside other religions, and saying that they are all paths to God, and says that they are all okay.
Oh, well, that's no problem, Arthur. All of the other popes did that too.
All of the other popes? Do you mean the few popes that came after the council?
Yes, of course. They were kissing Korans and attending pagan rituals and praying side by side with Protestants. All just par for the course. And so, as you can see, there's really nothing to worry about.
But it's just...
Just what?
Well, perhaps it's a silly thing, but that whole idea that the Catholic religion, well, it always taught that it's the one true religion, and that all others should be rejected. Categorically, even. I mean, when I go back and read the magisterium, I mean, when I read the teaching of popes, saints, and the canon law of the past, they always say the same thing.
But all of the popes themselves seem to reject that now. And so we don't have to believe it anymore. Just an archaic hangover from our ignorant past.
Well, but unless they are not popes. Look, Arthur, I know you're trying to mean well, my good chap, but really, I think I see the problem. You see, you just don't really trust the magisterium. Oh, really? Is that so? Yes, you see, what else is the magisterium other than the popes and the bishops and the laws telling us how to be Catholic? So if the popes and the bishops and the laws tell us that all of the other religions are now okay, then all of the other religions are now okay. You see, does that clear up the matter a bit? Oh, well, that's if they really are popes. And I just thought, well, I just didn't think that the magisterium could go back on itself is all.
Go back on itself?
Well, yes, I mean, I thought it always needed to be consistent, you know? Being protected by the spirit of truth and all that. It just seems that if it always said that doing these things was really objectively and universally wrong, but now says it's okay, I don't know. I admit that I'm no Aristotle, but that just seems a little bit illogical to me.
Well, if rationality and logic would lead me to conclude that he isn't the Pope, then call me illogical.
Yes, really, Arthur, I just don't think you understand the complexities and nuances of it all. And if the Pope says these things are okay, then really he must have good reason. Well, I don't know if that's really certain, and of course, that is only if he really is the Pope. Now, Arthur, I think we really have gone far too far on a matter which is really quite plain and simple. He was clearly chosen as the Pope, he is publicly recognized as the Pope, and the vast majority of people all over the world call him the Pope. And so clearly he is the Pope.
Hear, hear.
But really, Arthur, he is clearly the Pope, just as surely as Caitlyn Jenner is a strong, beautiful woman. Oh, is she?
Well, otherwise, how could she have won Woman of the Year?
Good. Now that that's all sorted, let's settle down and switch on the telly. Speaking of the Pope, he's doing a public service this evening.
Oh, marvellous. What's the topic?
I think he and some of the women clergy are going to give a warm-hearted presentation on how to give the right sacrifices to Vishnu.
Oh, wonderful stuff. Let's watch that as we tuck into some nice tea and crumpets with marmalade jam.
Oh, actually, I prefer sour mayonnaise on mine nowadays, old boy.
Oh, do you really? You mad rascal. Well, perhaps I'll join you. Will you be joining us, Arthur? Here we go. Yes, bloody good show.